Hello, Neogenians. Welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. Today we're talking about what everyone gets wrong about Satan, the big bad himself. We're discussing how to harness the energy of Satan to use it for power and influence rather than letting it destroy us from the inside out by lies and deception. So how to use it to break free rather than being enslaved by it. This is an incredibly important video. You're going to want to watch it to the end. This is extremely important stuff for being able to transform your life, and not only your life, but the world around you as well. This is very destructive energy, but also very powerful energy. So that's what we're talking about today as we continue to explore the Tree of Death. But before we get started, as always, my friends, remember, this is way more than a channel. This is a revolution of consciousness. We're here to wake the world the hell up, and we're spreading like fire, making go viral what the church tried to hide and destroy. So make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit subscribe, make sure you share this around so we can spread this around and reach millions of people. If you want to help out even more, consider becoming a member, and you get access to a lot of great stuff. You get access to free downloads on inner transformation, like the Tree of Death, like alchemy, like rituals, and more. So you can also get access to our, oh yeah, and I will be making a download free for members for this video, summarizing everything that we talk about today, like a cheat sheet. Also, you can get access to our members only videos. There's hundreds of them, and they're great. And we're having one right after this called The Terrifying Truth That Everyone Gets Wrong About the Gospel of Judas. Yeah, we're going to be diving into the Gospel of Judas like you've never heard of before. Even if you've heard of the Gospel of Judas, you've probably heard an incorrect interpretation, because most interpretations of it are incorrect. That's going to be a really good one. Let's see, if you want to help out even more, you can check out my books, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. That's the first one. And also go give me a follow on Spotify. We are growing so fast across these platforms, and we're now on Spotify as well. So go over there, help us spread like fire on that platform as well. We're growing real fast. And it's completely free to just give me a follow over there. So please do, it helps out. Links to all those things, my books and Spotify, they're in the description of this video. All right, but let's get started, my friends. We are talking about Satan, the final klipa on the Tree of Death, and how to harness its power so that we can use it for power and influence rather than letting it destroy us and enslave our lives. This is really important stuff, okay? And very misunderstood as well. So we're going to get started right away. As always, I just want to give you a quick, brief recap of what we're even talking about here in terms of the Tree of Death and the Tree of Life. These diagrams, they represent symbolically the structure of your psyche, the structure of your mind. The Tree of Life represents higher consciousness and higher aspects of mind. The Tree of Death represents the shadow self and chaotic and destructive aspects of mind. So, working with the Tree of Life and the Tree of Death is about reaching higher levels of consciousness and clearing out obstacles in your path that can prevent you from reaching higher levels of consciousness. The reason why we talk about things in terms of like angels and demons is because we are not doing an objective study of the psyche or reality. We are subjectively exploring our mind, and our psyche communicates in symbols and stories and metaphors, not through logical language. That's left brain. Right now, we're in right brain territory as we explore the unconscious. So that's why we use symbolism, not because it's a bunch of like woo-woo, oh, we really think that we're, doing summoning demons like in Hollywood. No, because we understand that the mind can connect with this symbolism, and how we can sort of hack our own mind by understanding these symbols and working with them, okay? So we're creating this map, we're creating this symbolic map and structure of the psyche within our mind. So we have gone through the Tree of Death, starting at number 10, Lilith, and going all the way up. Last week, we stopped on Talmiel, but today, the final, the 11th, is Satan. All right, so what does this mean? Let's talk about it. This is one of those things where if it sounds confusing at first, just go with it, let it wash over you. It'll make sense in the end, okay? So, Satan is the 11th klipa. So these are called klipot. Each of the spheres on the Tree of Death is a klipa, or plural klipot. Each of the spheres on the Tree of Life is a sephira, singular, or sephirot, plural. And each one has a shadow. Satan is the 11th sphere, or the 11th klipa, and is the shadow of Da'at on the Tree of Life. Now, first of all, let's talk about its number. Its number is important because you'll notice that Da'at is not numbered, whereas Satan is. That's because the 10 Sephirot on the Tree of Life represents balance. 10 is a number of balance, completion, and divine order. Da'at is not counted. There are many different reasons for this, and I won't get into it now, but it's called the hidden Sephirah, and it's simply not counted on the Tree of Life because it's more of a synthesis or mode of integration rather than it is a sphere in its own right. But on the Tree of Death, Satan, the shadow of Da'at, is counted as the 11th. And so this is really important because the Tree of Life is sort of defined by the number 10, and the Tree of Death is defined by the number of 11, because 10 represents balance and 11 represents imbalance, breaking, overflowing, unity breaking apart. And that's exactly what the klipot represent. Imbalanced distortions of the Tree of Life. And Satan is the 11th, really epitomizing that breaking of symmetry, really epitomizing imbalance and distortion itself as the 11th. So Satan is the shadow of Da'at, and Da'at means knowledge. Okay? So Da'at means knowledge, and it's what happens when the wisdom of Chokhmah and the understanding of Binah come together and synthesize in Da'at into higher consciousness that allows you to connect to the divine. So when Da'at is not here, there's this big empty space known as the abyss, okay? There's this big empty space here. When Da'at is not there, there's this big empty space known as the abyss. If you try to cross without Da'at or knowledge or higher consciousness, you fall into the abyss and end up on the Tree of Death, okay? A lot of people don't even know that that's happened to them. But that's what Da'at does. Da'at is the higher consciousness that allows you to cross the abyss to reach the divine triad, the supernals. Okay? So Da'at is higher consciousness that allows you to cross the abyss by uniting wisdom and understanding and integrating it into knowledge. All right? Okay. But in the abyss itself, we have the shadow of Da'at, which is Satan. So where Da'at unites wisdom and understanding of Chokhmah and Binah, Satan into knowledge, Satan takes the confusion of Gahagiel and the illusion and concealment of Satariel and knits them into lies. Okay? So Da'at is knowledge, Satan is lies. The Cathars even called Satan Rex Mundi, meaning the king of the world. And they believed that Satan trapped souls of light, actual angels, inside the material world in bodies into slaves of flesh. And the most dangerous part is that according to the Cathars, Satan used scripture itself to convince people and believe the lie that he was God. So, when we think of Satan in terms of the Tree of Death and our understanding of it here, we're thinking in terms of lies, the liar, the deceiver. That's why he's called the father of lies. In Hebrew, av ha-sheker. So, on the tree of life, da'at, or knowledge, is the higher consciousness that allows you to cross the abyss and connect to divinity. But on the tree of death, we're already in the abyss. Okay? So we're already in the abyss. So what's this part here? Just like this space here is where you fall into the abyss. Well, what's this space here that Satan is over? It's the river of Lethe, or the river of forgetfulness. So you fall into the abyss, you're already in the abyss, and here you have the river of Lethe, or the river of forgetfulness. And Satan's job is to make sure you can never climb out of the abyss, and that you drink from the river of Lethe. So here it's not just ignorance that traps us, but the lie of false knowledge. It's the illusion that we have wisdom and we have understanding and we have knowledge, but we actually do not. We have confusion, we have illusion, and we have lies. And so this connects to the river of Lethe from Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, souls drink from the river of Lethe before reincarnation so that they forget. They forget before they incarnate. So in our terms, the river of Lethe, or the river of forgetting, represents forgetting our divine self or the absolute. When we drink from the river of Lethe, we either forget that we are divine, or we forget that we're connected to the absolute. So a lot of people who work with the tree of death, just like a lot of people who work with the tree of life fall into the abyss and don't know that, a lot of people who work with the tree of death drink from the river of Lethe and forgetfulness without knowing it. And so what happens when you do that is many things can happen. Either you don't know that you are divine, or you believe the lie that you can split yourself off from the absolute. And we see a lot of people who work with the tree of death think that they can do that they can be actual independent gods, independent from the collective, which is not true. We can all become individual gods, but within a united collective. If you want to know more about that, watch my last video on Talmiel. We talk about that a lot. So I don't want to repeat a lot of information, but we talk about that a lot. Anyway, the river of Lethe is what keeps you trapped in forgetfulness within the abyss. The abyss is the fall itself. Lethe is even making us forget that we fell in the first place. So Satan's job is to make us drink from the river of Lethe, to make us drown in forgetfulness. However, just like Da'at, when properly integrated, allows us to cross the abyss, Satan, if properly integrated, will allow us to cross the river of Lethe, okay? So when people do not have Da'at, even if they think that they do, they fall into the abyss. But if they do have Da'at, higher consciousness, they can cross the abyss. Once we're in the abyss, if Satan is not integrated, you drink from the river of Lethe and forgetfulness. If Satan is integrated, you can cross. You can cross the river, okay? So that's the real trap of Satan. That you get, so Satan is lies, and that can form, that can take so many different, the difficulty of talking about the Satan klipa is that it takes so many different forms. It's all the lies that keep you from your inner divinity or our collective divinity. This can be in terms of chasing wealth, pleasure, validation, forgetting anything outside the material world entirely, thinking that that's all there is. You can become a slave to a god, right? Like you can believe that lie. There is a god above you. You must worship that god. Or You can believe that you can become a god apart from the absolute. That's also a lie of Satan, forgetting that you're part of the whole. Both are very different lies, but both are lies and Satan's work. So, Satan originally was not a name. Satan originally was a title that means adversary. So over time, this adversary became personified, and so Satan was not just a title anymore, but he became a being. But not only is he a being, so we have this figure of Satan, where we think about Satan in mythos and like the Christian mythos as a being, but he's not just a being in terms of the mythos, but also the principle of the adversary. So Satan is the adversarial current that exists within everything. The shadow that resists unity. So the adversary is Satan, and he's in the middle here of the pillar of rebellion. So remember, we have the pillar of chaos, the pillar of death, and the pillar of rebellion. Here we have Satan, the father of lies, the adversary, the one who rebelled against God, against deity. He is every adversarial current in the psyche and the cosmos. He is the force of every klipo combined. Every force that opposes truth and keeps souls trapped in ignorance, forgetfulness, and division. The spirit of every shadow. The arrogance of Taumiel. The confusion of Gashajiel. The concealment of Satariel. The doubt of Samael. The ego inflation of Tigerian. The wrath of Galahav. The smothering constriction of Gahag Sheklah. The envy of Arav Zerak, and on and on and on. All gathered into one adversarial force. So Satan is the totality of the shadow and every destructive impulse. You can kind of think of him as the final boss of the tree of death. If you don't integrate Satan, you are screwed. You might think that this is the highest, but sure, this is the highest, but this is everything combined. So if you don't integrate Satan, these are going to fuck you up. If you do integrate Satan, then you can more properly access the powers of the higher klipot or the lower klipot, depending on which direction you're looking. Okay? So let's bring some psychology into this. Carl Jung described this perfectly. So Carl Jung, let me see here. Let me get to my notes. So Carl Jung wrote that the devil describes the grotesque and sinister side of the unconscious. He also said the devil is the diabolical aspect of every psychic function that has broken loose from the hierarchy of the total psyche and now enjoys independence and absolute power, fraction, division. Finally, he said, the darkness supposedly represented by the devil that has localized itself in man. In other words, Satan isn't some external being. He's what happens when any part of the psyche, thought, emotion, desire, breaks or opposes the unity of the higher self or the absolute self and starts operating against it in an adversarial role. Satan is the adversary of unity, the adversary of truth, and above all, the adversary of knowledge. And his greatest trick is convincing you that his lies are truth or that his lies are knowledge. One thing I want to make clear here is that I just want to make this clear for if this might be someone's first video or first couple videos seeing, I do not associate Lucifer with Satan. Very different beings, and I do not place Lucifer on the tree of death. Many people do. I do not. There's no wrong way to do these things. Well, okay, I wouldn't say there's no wrong way to do these things. That's not true. There are wrong ways to do these things. But when it comes to the symbolism, it's what resonates with you. Personally, for the system that I work in and I develop here, Lucifer is not the tree of death. On the tree of death, and Lucifer is not Satan. Okay. Anyway, let's. I don't want to get into that in detail today because we'll get into. We'll talk about that in another video. Okay. But now, so let's get into more detail here. Remember, every klipot or every klipa has 4 levels. All right. Every klipa has 4 levels. So think of the Satan klipa as like a building with 4 levels on it. All right? And each one of these levels in the Satan building represents how that energy is expressed in reality. So the highest and the first level, the top floor, I should mean, the top level is the Archon level, the Archonic level. And this is at the cosmic scale, the level of the universal collective unconscious. So it's how this energy is defined at the highest, most all-encompassing level. All right? So the Archons are dark powers that shape and structure the realm of the material world and chaos into a prison. All right? So, what is the Archon of Satan? I'm going to use the bathroom before I tell you that. So, there. I had a big smoothie before I went live. And so, yeah. Okay. This particular, all right. This is an interesting one, okay? This is one of the most interesting Archons. Slightly confusing, but one of the most interesting. So if this sounds kind of confusing at first, stick with me, All right? Because it's actually really cool. The Archon of Satan is a being known as Adamus the Tyrant. Now, in earlier Gnostic texts, like the secret book of John, there is a being named Adamus, but he is not evil. Adamus is the Greek word that means indestructible. And so Adamus is divine, and he's called the Eye of Light. And the divine image of the true, perfect human as a god ruling in the higher eons, literally beside the Christ. In the secret gospel of the Egyptians, it says that all of creation comes from Adamus. Adamus is a god of light. So we have in the secret book of John, Adamus as a being of light. We have Adamus, Eye of Light, which means the indestructible Eye of Light, the Eye of God, essentially, ruling with Christ. For those who are familiar with Gnosticism, when Sophia gets trapped in the lower realms because Yaldabaoth stole some of her light, Adamus descends to save Sophia. In another Gnostic text called the Sophia of Jesus Christ, Adamus is even identified as Sophia's partner, her divine consort, working alongside her as a force of divine restoration. So that Adamus, Eye of Light, is the divine archetype of the perfected human as a god, the luminous reflection of the one, the source itself, the source expressed as a being. Okay. So, with that in mind, check this out. In a Gnostic text called Pistis Sophia, everything changes. In Pistis Sophia, we find not Adamus, Eye of Light, but a being that they call Adamus the Tyrant. And Adamus the Tyrant, which means the indestructible tyrant, Adamus the Tyrant is described as ruling over all the Archons, the enforcer of their power, and the one who leads the Archons in their rebellion against the light. So what happened here? Adamus the Tyrant is the shadow of Adamus, Eye of Light. He's the inversion, where the divine Adamus governs the upper eons and rules with Christ and is the partner of wisdom. Adamus the Tyrant, his shadow, rules the Archons and is the oppressor. Where the divine Adamus rescues Sophia, guess what Adamus the Tyrant does? Adamus the Tyrant is described as literally the being that keeps Sophia trapped in the lower realms and fights against her light. See, I think I have a quote here. Yeah. So whereas Adamus, Eye of Light, is like Sophia's healthy partner, Adamus the Tyrant is like an abusive stalker. So in the Pistis Sophia, it says that Adamus the Tyrant and all the tyrants, all the Archons, fight against Sophia's light, trying to pull her light down into the regions of chaos so she can't ascend. And by the way, Sophia's light, that represents us. Sophia is the light that attempts to liberate us. Wisdom. Okay? So Adamas, the tyrant, as the force that obstructs and fights against the light of Sophia, is also the one that fights against the light within all of us. So the text says, let me see here. The text says, and Adamas, the great tyrant, and all the tyrants began to fight in vain against the light. That's a quote from Pistis Sophia. So Adamas the tyrant represents all the powers of all the Archons united against illumination. So whereas Satan represents the powers of all the Qliphoth, Adamas the tyrant is the powers of all the Archons united against the light. He's the force that keeps humanity bound to lies, bound to the material world, the one who enforces the prison of forgetfulness. They drag Sophia's light and try and drag it downwards to prevent her, and by extension, humanity, from returning to the higher realms. So, if we understand Yaldabaoth as like the demiurge, the architect of the prison, then Adamas the tyrant is the one who runs it. If Yaldabaoth builds the system, Adamas enforces and maintains it, keeping souls trapped in ignorance, distraction, false divinity, false light, the artificial spirit. So psychologically, Adamas the tyrant represents the part of the psyche that resists awakening, that refuses to change, that refuses to be open-minded. The voice that says, hey, don't look any deeper. You already know the truth. Just stay right where you are. He'll keep you tied to fear, pride, possession. Now, interestingly, we have Adamas the tyrant, right? There's a very close parallel to this in Kabbalah, which is very interesting. I don't think enough people have realized the incredible parallels to Gnosticism and Kabbalah. That's why on my channel, we synthesize Kabbalah with Gnosticism. All right, I want to make that clear that some of the ideas that you find on this channel are original to this channel. Now, I'm not saying all of them are. I rely heavily on older traditions, but like the ideas of assigning the Archons to the Qliphoth, we are creating a synthesized system that synthesizes Gnosticism and Kabbalah into a single unified system, so that we're neither just like right-hand path or left-hand path, so that we're working with both our hands and we're working united. We'll talk more about that. After we're done talking about the Tree of Death on my channel, we'll talk more about how it fits in with Gnosticism, okay? But here's the really interesting thing. In Kabbalah, there's a figure known as Adam Belial. And Adam Belial is quite similar to Adamas the tyrant. Adam Belial means worthless. So Adam Belial literally means the worthless Adam. And he's the opposite of Da'at, the place of divine knowledge. Where Da'at is knowledge, Adam Belial is worthlessness, separation and disconnection from divinity. So it's the dark side of knowledge, when spiritual truths are used for selfish gain, when wisdom becomes manipulation, when information is corrupted into deceit. In other words, I just want to point out this very cool parallel here between Adamas the tyrant and Adam Belial. knowledge inverted into lies as a force of control and confinement. Okay, there's more secrets to unpack here. All right, there's some really cool stuff. So remember, Adamus means indestructible. So when you have Adamus, Eye of Light, you have the indestructible Eye of Light, which is really cool. Now, Adamus the Tyrant literally means the indestructible tyrant, the power that seems impossible to overcome. But guess what? Even that is a lie. Because when you look deeper, you find something really cool here. And these are connections that I am making. Basically, what I mean to say is the way we explore these concepts on my channel often coincides with tradition, but I don't stick to tradition. I want to give you guys what works the most effectively. Okay? So keep that in mind. If you look up some information that we talk about on this channel in terms of like the Tree of Life and Tree of Death, and you're like, wait, that doesn't quite match up with like this traditional definition, it's because if we stay stuck in tradition, we never evolve and move forward. And so this is as a way to synthesize psychology and the metaphysical substrate of reality as we understand it in a cutting edge way. All right. Anyway, so what I'm talking about here, all right, let's go back to Adamus. So Adamus, the indestructible tyrant, is part of the Satan Klipa, right? So you kind of have Satan and Adamus as associated powers. So here's what's really cool. In a book called the Book of Abramelin the Mage, there's something called a magical square. I'm going to show you what that means in a minute. But it's a magical square for the name Satan. And when you do that, you're going to find something really cool. Let me show you here. So let me show you what I mean. This is a magic square for Satan as described in the Book of Abramelin. So here's what's cool. Look, you have Satan, but you also have, what do you have? Adama. And so you have this over again. Satan and Adama. And Satan backwards, Natas, and Adama backwards, Amada. So we have Satan tied and connected to Adama. However, you'll notice that there's no S. It's not Adamus. It's Amada. It's Adama. It's not Adamas. It's Adama. And Adama is the Hebrew word for dirt. So the indestructible Adamus the tyrant is actually Adama the tyrant. Ruler of matter, posing as the indestructible one. He's the illusion of the eternal dominion, the eternal realm. But his indestructibility, his strength is another lie. It's another illusion. Like Yaldabaoth, who goes, oh, I'm the only God, there is no other. We can conceptualize Adamus as being like, Adama, the tyrant, being, I'm the indestructible one, when really he isn't. And that's the big secret of this Archon. His lies and his power only exist as long as you believe the lie. So Adamus the tyrant is the cosmic principle of resistance to awakening, the lie that keeps you asleep and from looking beyond. But once you look through it, you realize that the indestructibility can be collapsed like dirt and crumble. All right. So now remember, we're talking a lot about a lot of negative aspects here. We are going to be talking about how to integrate this positively. I just want you to understand how destructive of a force this is before we understand how to actually use it in a positive way, because we absolutely can. It's key. It's key to crossing the river of Lethe and gaining power and influence, okay? So let's talk about this. Let's go down a level. So the top level is the Archonic level, cosmic scale. We go down a level to the Archdemon level. The Archdemon level is the human collective unconscious, all right? So not universal, but specific to humanity. That's what the Archdemon represents. What the Archdemon represents is how the human psyche begins to organize itself according to the energy of Satan. So you see how each level expresses itself in a different way at a different level. So this is where it begins to organize in the human psyche. So what is the Archdemon of Satan? The Archdemon for Satan in Hebrew is Abaddon, or Apollyon in Greek. In Hebrew, he's called Abaddon. In Greek, he's called Apollyon. Either way, the name means the same thing, the destroyer. All right? The Hebrew word Abaddon means destruction or ruin. Now, in very early Hebrew thought, Abaddon wasn't a being, it was a place, a region of annihilation associated with Sheol, which is the underworld. So you seeing the connection here? Remember, we're in the abyss. Abaddon was the pit beneath the pit, the final void where everything is forgotten. But over time, this force became personified. Abaddon went from being a location to an angel of destruction itself, called the King of the Abyss. So the book of Job gives us one of the earliest glimpses of this. So let me see what this is. So the book of Job says, this is Job 28:20 through 22. Where then does wisdom come from? Abaddon and Death say, we have only heard a rumor of it with our ears. So think about this. Think about this. Wisdom on the tree of life is over here in Chokhmah. But remember, Da'at is the synthesis. So Da'at is knowledge and contains wisdom. And we have Satan as the shadow of Da'at, which is lies. And then we have this verse related to Abaddon saying, when does wisdom come from? Abaddon has only heard a rumor of it. So think about that line. That's really important. Abaddon and Death have only heard a rumor of wisdom. And what is a rumor? It's often a lie, isn't it? Not all the time, but it often is. A lie, or at least a distortion, a twisted fragment of truth. Something that's half heard or misremembered or entirely fabricated. So Abaddon doesn't have true knowledge. Abaddon has a warped echo of it, a lie. That's the essence of this level. Distorted wisdom, corrupted knowledge into deception. So in other writings, Abaddon becomes the mouth of the abyss itself. So in the Talmud, we have this idea of Abaddon as a region of the underworld where the wicked are swallowed whole. But by the time we reach the book of Revelation, the final book in the Bible, Abaddon shows up fully personified. So in Revelation 9, 1 through 11, it describes the sounding of the fifth trumpet. A fallen star descends and opens the bottomless pit. Smoke comes out, darkening the sun in the sky, and from the smoke comes an army of locust demons, monstrous armored beings who torment the earth. And their king, John says, their king has a name, in Hebrew Abaddon and in Greek Apollyon. That's what it says. And he is the king of the abyss, the angel of the abyss, who rules over the forces of chaos that come from the pit. Some places even identify Abaddon directly with the devil. But symbolically, Abaddon or Apollyon is how the energy of Satan manifests and begins to organize within the human psyche. The organizing principle of the lie. So he's the king of the abyss in terms of the human level. The ruler of all the dark organizing functions of destruction and disintegration. In other words, just like Satan is all the powers of all the Klippa, and Adamas the tyrant is the power of all the Archons, Abaddon or Apollyon the destroyer is the energy of all the archdemons, because he's the ruler of the abyss. Whether it's fear or wrath or envy or deceit or obsession, and weaves them together into all the lies that keep humanity asleep. All the archdemons combined, the sum of every lie that's ever been told, every delusion that we believe in. Okay. Let's go down a level to the demon level. So where the archdemon represents the organization of the human psyche, the demon level in terms of psychology, they're known as complexes. What this means in layman's speak is that the demon level, so the archdemon is the archetypal. It's how the energy of Satan is organized in human psyches. The demon level is how specifically it organizes for you. Because it's gonna organize differently across different people. Some people will become enchained by the lie that reality is only material. Some people will be enchained by the lie that they have to worship a god. Some will be enchained by the lie that they can become a god independent and separate from the absolute, which is not true. These are all lies, but they're different from every person. And here the demon level is how it takes shape personally for you based on your personal experiences, your personal memories, your personal concepts, etc. So it's your mind specifically. The demons of the Satan Klippa are the Legion of the Abyss. So they're also the 72 demons of the Goetia. But psychologically, each member of this legion, each legionnaire, is a fragment of your own psyche. So, where Abaddon is the king of the abyss, the organizing force of all the archdemons combined, the legion are his soldiers. You understand? Archdemon, leading principle, demon, legion, his soldiers. How your personal experiences, memories, and concepts come together to keep you trapped in a lie, in the abyss, drinking from the river of Lethe and forgetfulness forever. So Archdemon is the force that rules the armies of the demons. In psychological terms, you talk about how complexes have an archetypal core. But that's too detailed for this video, but you get the idea. So this are all the fragmented aspects of your psyche. All the fragmented aspects of your psyche that are not aligned with your higher self. Okay? So, Legion shows up in the Bible. So in Mark 5-9, there's this guy who's possessed. All right? There's this guy who's possessed, and Jesus is known for casting demons out of people. So Jesus wants to cast the demon out of this possessed guy. And so Jesus asks him, "What is your name?" And the demon replies, "My name is Legion, for we are many." So Legion is a collective of demons. You know, think, oh, I'm just going to, this guy's possessed by one demon. No, he's possessed by an army of demons. Legion. Then Luke 8:31 says, "And they begged Jesus repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss." So, the demonic level here is the Legion of the Abyss. And it represents your personal memories and experiences. Now, as I always say, we aren't going to go into detail into the demonic level because that would require understanding like Solomonic magic, Goetic magic, working with the 72 demons, which would require its own video series. If you guys want that video series on the 72 demons and the Goetia and the demonic level and how to work with them, let me know in the comments, and at some point we can do a video on that. But the idea here is, the secret to ultimately take away is, like anything else, you cannot destroy Legion. You can only integrate them. But the awesome thing is the moment that you recognize that, their power over you breaks and you gain their power. You organize that army in accordance with your higher self. And you aren't possessed by demons. You're possessed by fragmented fractures of your own psyche. But when you integrate them in alignment with your higher self and your true will, then the Legion becomes your army. Okay. Let's talk about the planetary level, which is the final level. And remember, we're going to talk about integration and how to work positively with these forces. So the planetary level represents symbolically how all this shows up in your actions and behavior. So before, it's more abstract or more dealing with the metaphysical or more dealing with the psychic in terms of psyche in the mind. How your psyche organizes itself, how the human collective unconscious organizes itself, how the energy organizes itself at a cosmic scale. But the planetary level is how it becomes behaviors and actions, your behavioral patterns and your actions. So, like we had this problem with Talmiel, it's difficult to list all. You can't list all of them because the actions will, because we're talking about the forces of everything here, all the dark forces. So it can manifest in many, many, many different ways, but we can get a grasp and idea of it. The reason why we use planets is because planets are physical while demons are not physical. So demons and archdemons relate to the psyche because it's immaterial. Planets we use symbolically because they're physical and so relate to physical world, actions and behavior. But very important to understand, it has nothing to do with the literal planets. Nothing to do with the hunks of rocks floating in the sky or the gases floating in the sky. That has nothing to do with that. It's symbolism. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, so let's talk about the planetary level. In Da'at, the planet associated with Da'at is Uranus and also the entire solar system. Okay, so Da'at is associated with Uranus and the entire solar system. Satan then is the shadow of Uranus and the shadow of the solar system, because each one of these is a planet, of course. And then we have the shadow, Uranus, and the shadow of the solar system. So what is the shadow of Uranus? We have the dark flame of Prometheus. Okay? The shadow of Uranus is the dark flame of Prometheus. So in esotericism, Uranus is associated with Prometheus. So here, and Prometheus is that figure that steals fire from the gods and brings it to humanity. Knowledge bringer. But this is the dark fire of Prometheus. So in esotericism, Uranus represents the spark of genius, revolution, and paradigm shifts. It's a lightning strike of awakening that breaks you out of old ways of thinking and moves you to a new a paradigm shift. Genius, strikes of genius, revolutions of thought, sudden illumination. It's a planet of freedom, invention, and enlightenment. Like I said, it's Prometheus stealing fire from the gods and giving it to humanity. That fire is consciousness, higher awareness. And so Uranus is that drive that says, I will know, I will create, I will transcend. But when that Uranian fire falls into the abyss, it becomes the dark flame of Prometheus. And what that represents is the flame of rebellion, but without wisdom. Knowledge used not to liberate, but knowledge used to deceive, dominate, and destroy. In its pure form, Uranus shatters systems to free the mind. But its shadow is the inflated ego that believes it's transcended everything. The positively in Uranus is, whoa, I have this knowledge and I can move to new ways of thinking. Uranus, the dark flame of Prometheus, goes, I know everything. I know it all already. And I'm going to use my knowledge to dominate, deceive, and destroy. So you want to know something really cool about Uranus? So Uranus doesn't rotate like other planets. Guess what? It rolls on its side. About 98 degrees. Okay? So it's a almost a 90 degree turn. So it rolls on its side. It's different from all the other planets. What's cool about this is that because it has this very interesting movement, each of its poles faces the sun for about 42 years of daylight, followed by 42 years of darkness. How cool is that as a representation of light and shadow in Uranus? While one of its side has 42 years of light, the other has 42 years of darkness. And then, of course, it swaps. Think about that. half a century of light, half a century of shadow. 42 years. That's half a lifetime. Half a lifetime of sunrise, half a lifetime of sunset. Uranus is a world divided between extremes. One side blazing with constant daylight and the other in endless night. So the dark flame of Prometheus is that dark side of Uranus. It becomes the black fire, the dark fire that's fallen into the abyss. That's what that represents here. The dark side of Uranus. Pretty cool, right? All right, let's see here. Sorry, I'm going to get my notes up again. All right, so, but at this level, it's not just the shadow of Uranus, it's the shadow of the entire solar system, the inversion of the cosmos itself, okay? Because remember, each one of these is a shadow associated with a shadow planet, right? We have the dark side of the moon, or black moon Lilith. We have the shadow of the elements. We have mercurial poison. We have Vesper. We have the black sun, and on and on and on and on and on. So, whereas the planet associated with Satan is the dark side of Uranus, it's also the dark side of the entire dark solar system, the entire inverted solar system. So that's important to understand. Okay, but how does this actually show up in our lives? Because remember, the planetary level is how it shows up in our behavior and action. So how does it actually show up? All right, so it either shows up as unintegrated or integrated. Unintegrated bad, integrated good. Let's first talk about when it is not integrated. It can show up in two ways, as repressed or possessed. So what repressed means is that you deny that Satan exists inside you. Because he does. He exists in all of us. It's that dark deception and the powers of the shadow that are in all of us. So repression is when you deny that Satan exists in you. When you repress the idea that you could ever be deceived or be a deceiver. You tell yourself, I know the truth, or I'd never fall for lies. Other people get fooled, not me. Or I would never lie, or I would never deceive. But that's the trap, because when you believe you can't be deceived, you've already fallen for a lie. Because you fucking can. Everyone can. I can. You can. We can all fall for lies. We all have. We all will. And we all have the power to deceive. Whether it's a huge, awful lie or a little white lie, we all have the power for deception. But when you repress the possibility of deception, you become blind to it. So you stop questioning your own beliefs and you cling so hard to what you think is true, and you defend it like your identity depends on it. I know this is true. I could never be deceived. I know it's true. And then you start projecting and start preaching to others as well. Why do you start preaching to others? Because you're convinced you're doing good. You're convinced that what you know is true. So what are you doing? You're spreading the truth. But what are you actually doing? You're spreading misinformation. You're spreading lies. So not only are you deceived, but you become the deceiver. Unbeknownst to you, In spreading what you believe is true, you become the liar. So this power of Satan that you repress stays in the background and manipulates you, makes you believe you're on the side of truth so completely that you stop checking to see if what you believe is actually true. You just go online to look up things that reinforce your beliefs and confirm your beliefs rather than trying to find anything that challenges it. And you start projecting. You start thinking that everyone else is lost or deceived or are deceivers. By the way, think of Christianity. Christianity thinks it's the truth. Christianity shuns the devil. Christianity deceives the world. Satan rules Christianity. Satan is the ruler of Christianity. So, when you believe that it's the truth and that you have no capacity for deception, you defend it harder and spread it further and convince more people of it. Because the more people who believe the lie, the more you convince yourself that it is true. Look how many people believe it. It must be true. I know the truth. So Satan is the true ruler of religions like Christianity. That's the satanic religion. Christianity is Satanism. But when you repress Satan, you tell yourself, oh no, I'm on the side of truth. They're the liars. They're the evil ones. They're the sinners. They're the ones controlled by Satan. They're the satanic ones. That's why I love Gnosticism so much, because Christianity tries to call those who follow the light satanic, where Gnostics goes, hell no. Satan is the ruler of Christianity. Rex Mundi, as the Cathars called him. Orthodox Christianity, the Christianity that we know it today, not, of course, Gnostic Christianity. All right? So that's what happens when you repress Satan and repress that you can that you can fall for lies, or that you can be a liar or a deceiver, whatever, however you want to phrase it or frame it. That's what happens when you repress it. Now, what about what happens when you become possessed by it? A lot of people in the occult end up becoming possessed by Satan. Those who follow darker paths often become possessed by Satan. This is when you don't repress it, you just make it your identity. You identify with the archetype of Satan. You indulge in all the darkness. You follow the law of selfishness. You know how manipulation works, and you use it. You know people can be controlled, and you do it anyway. You focus on what gives you power. Here, the ego becomes inflated to the point where it sees itself as the ultimate authority. Or possibly not even the ego per se, but when in Talmiel, when the higher self gets warped and declares itself as God apart from the absolute. So there are many different levels and layers here, many different ways to become deceived. But ultimately, when one is possessed, they identify and become the Satan. Satan is part of us. It's not our entire self. It's part of us. So when you become possessed, you let it overtake you. And so it's the choice of twisting truth and manipulating for control. And they feed on influence, admiration, fear. They know they're manipulating reality, but they justify it. I'm just smarter. I'm above others. I'm doing what others can't. I deserve this knowledge. Other people, they could never understand this. I am above them. Oh, some people don't have this knowledge. They're too dumb. Oh, some people are struggling with money. They must be lazy. I'm just better. And I deserve to be better. And I am elevated and look down upon others. That's Satan possessed. The ultimate manipulator, the ultimate deceiver. All right. Let's talk about the positive part now and how powerful this can really become. All right. This is super important and something that a lot of people overlook. And you're going to find that you'll see what I mean, okay? But it's very important. So when you integrate Satan, and remember, integrate is a fancy word for deal with. How do you, okay, Satan is a part of me. I have this capacity for deception. How do I deal with it? What do I do about it? So with integration, you face the deceiver in yourself and acknowledge its existence. So first of all, when we talked about Talmiel, we talked about how if you properly integrate Talmiel, it's the creation of the black diamond in Indra's net, which is essentially the idea that you can become an individual god, the black diamond, but within the network of other individual gods that form a unity, right? It's one and many. The lie Talmiel sells is that you can be one without the many, but you can't. That you can be, that you can break away from the many and become your own. No, you can't. We're all in this together. Okay? So Talmiel integrated is the creation of the black diamond within Indra's net. Satan integrated is learning how to use that diamond. What does that mean? So the black diamond is kind of like the dark form of the philosopher's stone. The philosopher's stone has the power to turn metal into gold. You can turn other things into gold. So what this represents is awakening divine consciousness in others. It's no longer just internal, it becomes externalized. Influence. Okay, so with that in mind, let's talk about the black diamond because it's similar. When you integrate Satan, you stop seeing influence, power, and persuasion as necessarily sinful or evil. You don't repress them, and you don't deny them, and you don't use them for selfish control. But you consciously use these same forces as tools to awaken and liberate, not to dominate. So what do I mean by this? Think about a lot of tools of what mine, okay, think about appearance, communication, charisma, wealth, persuasion. A lot of these things can be used very negatively and very satanically in a negative way. Cult leaders can use charisma to lead people into bullshit beliefs that are harmful. You can use your wealth to dominate others, and you can use persuasive propaganda tools to keep humanity locked in lies. But guess what? That doesn't mean that these things are necessarily evil in terms of like charisma, powerful, inspiring communication, appearance, wealth, and persuasion, if used properly, is how you gain influence and power, but not in a selfish way. in a way to awaken and liberate, not to dominate. So let's be really clear about this. This is not manipulation, it's mastery. So Satan integrated is understanding that reality itself is a theater of symbols, language, and perception. Guess what a lie is? Art. Art is a lie. What do I mean by that? Think of movies, for example. Now, I'm not saying that all art, it has no truth value. That's not what I mean. But for what I mean, let me think of a movie. A movie is a lie. It didn't happen. But does that mean it's bad? No. It makes life interesting. It makes life worth living. We live in a deception right now. This world around us is the great deception. But it's also the great theater. It's not a prison. It's our playground. We live in this universal theater. A play is a lie. Didn't actually happen. It's made up. But it's fun. It's exciting. It's wonderful. The material world is made up. But it's fun. It's exciting. It's wonderful. Everyone is ultimately performing something. So you learn to skillfully play within it. So you gain these powers to, let's say, speak persuasively. Not to trick, but to reach and to teach. If you had no persuasive speech, my God, it would be boring. You just be, and then the blah, blah, blah. Like if you took out all, injecting emotion and excitement to expand and reach. And think about appearance. You can dress in a way that commands attention. If you go up to talk somewhere and you're dressed in like clothes that haven't been washed in years, not years, that'd be really gross, but dirty clothes, dirty, wrinkled clothes, holes all over. People are probably that's gonna change people's perception of you. Now, that's not to say that can't be used. You could be doing it to make a point. If you purposefully, I'm gonna dress this way because I'm going to make the point that you don't need fancy clothes, for example. That's different, but you're still using your appearance in that case. You see, it's intentional. You're using your appearance to get people to think in a certain way. Oh, you're right. You're telling me this and I'm seeing that, oh, you're right. Your speech is all about how you don't need fancy clothes and fancy things or whatever. But that's different. That's different than just being like, you know what? I'm just gonna dressed in raggedy old clothes just because. In the case when you're doing it to make a point, you're still using it as a method in your theater. Same thing with makeup. If you, let's say, want to make a TikTok video to get across an important idea, and you know that if you wear certain kind of makeup to look attractive, it's going to get millions of views, that is using that deceiver energy, but not in a bad way. It's a theater. The deceiver becomes the theater. That's the important key to takeaway here. When it's integrated, the deceiver becomes the theater. But this applies to everything. You could do the opposite, where you wear makeup styles that are what someone would typically think is unattractive, but to make a point. Like there's this really cool, I don't know anything about her, but her Instagram handle, probably most of you have heard of her. She's really popular. Her Instagram handle is, I think, 666 Barbie. And I think she's a boxer or a fighter of some kind. I'm not exactly sure, but she has a super cool look, but it's very, like, most people would think it's terrifying, but it's really awesome. It's super cool, but it's a theater, and that is what spreads and gains traction. And so the power that Satan integrated gives us is the power of theater, the power of persuasion, the power of aesthetics, the power to actually make change effectively. If you try and make a TikTok video, you don't give a shit about how you look, you got really bad lighting, you have a really dull speech that you prepared, according to the statistics of blah, 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 and if you look in these ancient records and the Dead Sea Scrolls, and might as well be talking to the wall. Now, it sucks that it's like that. It would be not, I watch boring, quote unquote, boring lectures all the time, and there's great content in it. But sometimes, oh my God, when I was learning Kant, I took this online college series of videos learning Kant. Oh, the most boring. It was almost like a parody. I don't want to be mean to the poor guy, but it was so. And Kant said that if you look at the dialectic of the understanding in relation to the imagination and the deontology of, like, oh my God, but it was good information. But think about how much better it would have been if he made it, and how much more people one would have reached if one would have made it more interesting, not so fucking boring. So Satan integrated is the power of aesthetics, the power of persuasion, even the power of money and status. Now remember, these things can be very bad, but they don't have to be, because guess what? You can use your funds to create and extend. I mean, that's why I spend quite a lot of money on the videos that I make on this channel, because I want the quality to be really good. Not because I'm like, oh, look how fucking cool I am. But there's nothing wrong with that either. But I mean, that's not like the point. The point is to make the videos digestible, to make the information accessible, to make it fun, to make it interesting. And again, I don't want to make it sound like there's nothing wrong with having aesthetics. I have a specific aesthetic that I like. And, it's one of those things where, some people have been like, if you looked more normal, you would reach more people. If you didn't dress in black and you cut your hair and you didn't blah, 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 you'd reach more people. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Possibly. But I dress the way I do in a very intentional way, because I have many, many, many different goals. One of which is to reach many people. But another aspect is it's not just to reach other people. I won't give up certain things to do that, because one of the core aspects of the message of this channel is to create yourself and to express yourself. And so my aesthetic is about the creation and expression of myself, and I will not give that up simply for reach. One could do that. And that's an option, but it's all intentional. It's all with something in mind. Everything is very, very much intentional. And that's the idea here. Not to see things like appearance and persuasion and money as necessarily bad. They are not. They can be very bad, but it's how you use it. What is going to fuck you up is by denying these things exist in you at all. If you go, no, this isn't me, that's not in me, it's in you, it's there. So the question is how to use it. The key difference is intent. You're not doing it to deceive. The deceiver becomes the theater. You're doing it to communicate effectively in a world that runs on illusion. So, like, look at America. America has been a big fucking reality TV show. America is a reality TV show at this point. I don't think that's a good thing. I think that's an awful thing. But if someone wanted to be have a higher status in politics, you have to be entertaining. That's why a lot of people like Trump. They think he's entertaining. They think he's funny. They think he's trolling. They think he's but then look at on the other side, everyone's so goddamn boring. But look at the stuff that does start to get attention. Look at like what Gavin Newsom has done with all the funny, entertaining things and memes that he posts. Now, I'm not saying this is a good thing, but it becomes this reality show. And you see where it's intentional. When you go, oh, this is the theater that we're working in. How can we be effective within it? And that's just one example. I'm not here to talk about politics. But really, this applies to everything. And you can see it clearly in the political sphere. It's a circus. Not a good thing, but we're in a circus. So you have many different options. You could try, and there's more options than that as well. It's not like you have to play that game. There's one option of playing that game, or then there's the option of not playing that game at all. But that would, again, be an intentional choice. So let's talk a little bit more about this. So what we're talking about here, Aleister Crowley called this the curse of the Magus. So what is the curse of the Magus? The Magus is someone who comes to reveal a new truth to humanity that's going to change the world, essentially. Okay? That's what a Magus is in terms of Aleister Crowley describing it. He is, or she, or they are an individual who is imparting a truth that will change the world. But what does Aleister Crowley say? Aleister Crowley says that every word of the Magus is a lie. And why is that? Because words themselves are deception and illusion, no matter how you try and slice it. If you have this experience of divinity, like let's say you're the Magus, you have this experience of divinity, and now you're trying to put it into words, is it going to be exactly what that is? Absolutely not. It's going to divide it and simplify it and distort it and try and put it in story format and parables and analogies. So in that sense, it's a lie. But that doesn't mean that it's bad. That's just the nature of the reality that we live in. So like Jesus is considered a Magus. Jesus had this higher consciousness that wanted to reveal a truth to the world. But what happened? His words were misunderstood and turned into a religion that contradicts and enslaves and imprisons. I don't believe Jesus the man was intentionally trying to lie. I believe that Jesus the man was intentionally trying to get across ideas as best as he possibly could. But you can't capture it. Everything in this world, every word, every image, every act is part of the illusion. But instead of rejecting it, you understand how to use or operate within the illusion consciously to lead others beyond illusion. You see, that's kind of the paradox here. It's not really a paradox, but you see what I'm saying? You have to use illusion. Oh, I'm going to wear makeup. I'm going to look a certain way. I'm going to make this TikTok, blah, 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 blah. So it will go viral. So people will actually see it. So others can get beyond the illusion. We live in the material world, which is an illusion. But I have to use the material world to communicate to you guys. And we all have to use the material world to communicate with each other. Now, let's not talk about, communicating psychically or anything like that. Let's leave that aside for now. But in general, when we're talking over video, in person, etc. But if you're trying to tell people that there's more to reality than the material world, you have to use the medium of the illusion. You have to use the medium of the material world to get that idea across. So this is about understanding how to be effective using language, art, influence, and power in the service of transformation instead of egoic, selfish desires. So Satan integrated is seeing the world as it is: deceptive, symbolic, intricate, and layered, but moving through it deliberately as a conscious player instead of a pawn being moved around. So let's take language for I know this is going for a while, but this is super important. I mean, Satan is the 11th klipa here, so this is important. So I want to make sure it's really understood well. Let's take language, for example. We point to something and call it, oh, that thing over there, that's a tree. That's what we say. We point to it and go, that is a tree. But is it really a tree? No. It is an ineffable collection of energy and frequency patterns that we slap the label tree on it. So in a sense, to call it a tree is a lie. But that lie is useful. Language is a lie, but language allows us to communicate. So what do? We don't abandon language, but we use it consciously. We use illusion to communicate truth as best as we can, as close as we possibly can. That is Satan integrated, the understanding that this entire world is a great theater. And so you learn how to put on a show, not to lull people to sleep, but to wake them up. You speak and dress and act with awareness, deliberately, to affect change and reality. Satan integrated is the conscious artist of reality. This is art. This is theater in a beautiful way. Satan is called Rex Mundi by the Cathars as the king of the world, but we realize that the world isn't a prison when we integrate properly. It's our canvas to create whatever we so will. The only thing that can reflect the fundamental essence of reality objectively, in truth, is mathematics. And we talk a lot about mathematics, and mathematics are filled in my books. But guess what? It also bores the hell out of people. So we have to go beyond that to communicate these ideas. So when you integrate Satan, you become the master of illusion, not as a deceiver, but as the theater. And when you integrate Satan, this allows you to cross the river of Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. Why? Because integrated, so think of, you have the three shadows of divinity, and then the river. Think of it as like a curtain. Satan integrated allows you to peer behind the curtain, to take a peek behind the curtain. Because when you integrate Satan, you're no longer the audience, you are the magician. You are the magus. And when you do all this properly, you are a magus of light that has integrated the darkness, that knows the truth of reality and has the power to then make the change and transform. Okay, that was a lot. Let's talk about some practical exercises here. Okay? Remember, you should always pair a ritual with an exercise. The ritual is sort of your commitment to do it. And I give a ritual that's applicable to all the Kleepot for members as a downloadable PDF. But for now, I'll explain the exercises here. The ritual is not necessary. It's better if you do the ritual. It's a reinforcement of commitment, but it's not 100% necessary. But let's take a look at the exercises. So these exercises are just to get the ball rolling. This is a personal thing, so you have to think of your life and how you understand things and how you experiencing things to think of your own exercises. But these are some to get the ball rolling, okay? Let's take the tree, what I talked about earlier. Next time you look at an object, like a tree, a chair, or a plate, or a cup, or whatever, pause for a minute before you smack a label on it and ask yourself, what is this really? Before my mind automatically labels and categorizes it. What is it in itself in terms of a collection of frequency and energy that's ultimately bound up with the entire universe? Everything is bound up to everything. The cup sitting on your table is bound up with the entire universe. All of it is connected. Everything is connected. To partition a small section of the universe off and label it as cup is not a truth, but a practical method of communication. So look at it and try and understand it without the label, like with new eyes, with fresh eyes. And then notice how the word shapes your perception of it. And you can do this exercise many times. And the idea is to train yourself to remember that all language is a simplification, a useful deception. You don't give up words, but you stop being tricked by them. Okay, here's another really good one with relation to style. One day, dress deliberately with one intent in mind: to influence mood. Maybe you wear something very sharp and commanding, or another day, you wear something really out there and extravagant and like what people would think is weird and unusual. Or another day, wear raggedy old clothes. Watch how people respond differently to you. Become conscious of the fact that appearance itself is communication that can get you different results. It is the costume and the theater of the world. You're learning to use the theater of life instead of just going about it unconsciously. Here's another really good example or a good exercise, and so many people need to do this, which is amplify what you already do. Please do this. One thing that frustrates me so much is that people don't do this. This is so important, okay? Think about something that you do that you're good at. Maybe you're good at painting. Maybe you're good, a good musician. Maybe you're a good public speaker, whatever. Maybe you're a good guitarist. Maybe just think of what you're good at. Now think about how could you augment it, make it better, make it more persuasive. If you're a musician, instead of just standing there, think about, could you maybe add more theatrics, costume, more emotion, more storytelling? Could you work harder on promotion, getting the word out, making viral videos, making flyers, doing gigs? All of this patterning to amplify what you do. If you're a public speaker, I'm a great public speaker, aren't I? If you're a public speaker, could you use examples, jokes, changes in tone and pacing so that you're not fucking boring? If you write or create, could you make it more visual, more relatable, more emotionally charged? Presenting a message. Can you, again, get that out to more people as well? Make a social media profile dedicated to it and don't let it just sit there. Find ways to promote it. Get it out there. Let people see it. So this is about becoming effective. Understanding how to play in the world that we are in and learning how to express truth in a way where people actually listen. So a lot of people complain about social media, and I do too. Social media can be total bullshit. But here's the thing, like I make YouTube videos and I realize that it sucks, but the algorithm wants certain things to be a certain way. So I work within those parameters, and instead of being pissed about it or like I'm not even going to do it, I look at it as like a game, and it changes all the time. It used to be that YouTube really liked very short, punchy 5-10 minute videos. These days, they like hour-long videos. And it's constantly changing or whatever. And it's like, hey, this is the game. Okay, how can we play effectively in the game? Now, some people might be like, you know what? I'm not going to play the game. I'm going to change the game. Then cool. Start your own social media platform. Make it different. But figure something out. And please, for the love of God, try to do this. So many people don't do this. They're just like, oh, I'm just going to make music and sit in my basement all day. Or I'm going to paint, but no one's ever going to see my paintings. But if that satisfies you, that's fine. If you're just like, oh, I just do it for myself because it satisfies me and I'm expressing myself, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if you intend to make change, and this is kind of what this sphere is about, using this black diamond to transform and influence. If you are about making change, you're not going to make change sit in your basement every day. Here's another one. Observe what really influences people. Spend one day just watching and watch what people respond to. I do this all the time. In ads, social media, conversations, politics, art, entertainment, whatever. And notice something. Are they moved by logic and facts or by emotion and story? Guess what? Most people are not convinced by reason, logic, or facts, but by how something makes them feel. And incorporate that in what you do. Incorporate that knowledge and understanding with what you do. And you'll feel a difference instantly. Because most, I cannot speak today. I've been talking, when I talk for hours, I start tripping over my words. Most truth tellers fail not because they're wrong, but because they're boring. So at some point on my channel, I would like to talk about more about quantum mechanics and mathematics. Right now, it's not really what the algorithm wants. I would like to do that. But notice that I do things like for example, I have a video called, something like Jesus reveals that reality is a simulation or something like that, where I talk about the Gnostic text, the Sophia of Jesus Christ, where Jesus is talking to his disciples after his resurrection, and he comes as a being of light and starts describing how reality is generated from the one and emanations of light and eons and beings. And I use that as a medium and opportunity to talk about Max Planck and Erwin Schrödinger and quantum physics and Heisenberg and all of these great minds and physics, but I pair it with that interesting, engaging story of the Sophia of Jesus Christ. You see what I mean? It's about being smart and knowing how to, and I love both things, by the way. I love Gnosticism and I love quantum mechanics. It's just sometimes it would be nice to just talk about, only quantum mechanics or only mathematics. But if I make a video about quantum mechanics or mathematics or one of my favorite philosophers, Hegel, people just aren't going to watch it unless I find a really a way to make it interesting, which there are ways of making it interesting. Like, for example, Hegel had ties to like secret societies, which is actually really fucking cool, and was influenced by alchemy and all this sort of stuff. So if I did a video on Hegel, but emphasize those parts, more people would listen. And then more people will be exposed to ideas that they've never heard before. It's kind of like truth is like medicine that tastes really bad. But if you wrap it up in candy, it tastes good and you get the medicine at the same time. So that's kind of what this is like. This whole point here is to get people to take their medicine so that they can wake up. It's like you want the red pill or the blue pill. Well, the red pill tastes so bad. But it's like, but let's put it in a gummy bear. Then people will eat it. I can't have gummy bears. I'm vegan. It says, a vegan gummy bear. They have vegan gummy bears. They're pretty good. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. Here's another one. Think about how money can be used as a form of influence. How can you use your money to amplify something meaningful? Like funding your own creative projects, or promoting an idea that helps people wake up, or improving your tools so your message can reach further. Better guitar, better microphone, better camera, better paint, ads to promote your social media presence. I've never found ads to be very effective, so I'm not saying that that's a good idea, but I don't know whether it is or not good to do that. But you get right. You can use for promotion. But again, this isn't just purely for selfish reasons. It's to express and expand. And then this is another one with, you can just go through your day, and as you just go through your day, remind yourself that the world itself is a theater. We live in a realm of illusion, but that's not a bad thing. Magic shows are fucking awesome. But realize that the world is a theater and everyone is performing whether they realize it or not. And ask, what role are you playing? Are you expressing yourself consciously, or are you just reacting automatically? Are you playing a role that's been forced on you by society, or are you creating yourself? That's what it's about, creating yourself. And use this to refine your performance. Consciously think about these things. Think about your tone. Think about your body language. Think about your timing. Think about how you carry yourself. Back straight, shoulders back. It's going to be a lot different than if you just are like this. People's perception of you will change. If you go up on stage, back straight, shoulders back, projecting, it's going to be way more powerful if you go up on stage and you're like, super quiet. Oh, hi, guys. Oh, wow. I didn't really prepare for this, but I wanted to talk to you about the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Some people will watch, but most people are going to be bored to tears. Anyway, the point is, though, create yourself. Choose who you want to be. And you don't have to be this super professional. If that's not you, don't. Be a Diogenes if you want to be a Diogenes. But do it intentionally. The goal is not to fake things. It's to become aware that you're already performing. So to start doing it as a conscious creator and seeing your life as art rather than it being forced on you. Okay, that was a really long one. God damn. But super important. I hope you guys see how important this is. Because it's the power that can keep you locked in deception and falling for the lie. Thinking that the show is reality. And you can see that every day right now in everything going on in the world. Shows and propaganda everywhere. But when you can pinpoint that, realize it, you become extremely conscious. And then the other aspect of this is understanding that using and cultivating things like charisma, your look, money, influence is not bad. It's effective when you are using it to help others wake up and break free. And please realize how important this is, because most people, they don't do anything to make change. They just sit and do nothing. They never think about how they can become truly effective. That's what it's about. It's becoming this living archetypal force that others tune to. You're not going to be an archetypal force if you're like everyone else. You're not going to be an archetypal force if you're fucking boring. Again, it doesn't mean to be ego inflated. It means to be a powerful force. Remember, this is not right hand or left hand. This is combined. This is synthesized. So we don't ignore these shadow powers. We use them. We use these shadow powers, but in service to enlightening the world. That's the difference. And that's how to be extremely effective. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this. So this has been, we've explored every clipo on the Tree of Death. Next, what I want to hear from you guys, if you want to explore the paths that connect them, the 22 paths of shadow or the 22 tunnels of Set, and the demons or sentinels that reside there, and how it's related to the tarot as well. Let me know in the comments if you guys want to see that next. But I hope you guys enjoy this. Remember, we're having a members only video after this. So if you want to become a member, it helps out the channel a lot. Helps reach more people, you get access to a lot of great stuff. I'm going to be making a free download for this video summarizing everything we talk about. There's a bunch of other downloads free for members, which have the Tree of Death and Alchemy and Rituals, etc., etc. And please hit like and subscribe, of course, as always. We're having a members only video right after this as well. Today's members only video, it's going to be a good one. It's called Everyone Got the Gospel of Judas Wrong. Here's the terrifying truth. We're going to crack open the Gospel of Judas. And even if you've heard of the Gospel of Judas before, this is in a completely different way. Most people get this wrong. And it's a very interesting gospel. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the members only video. But yeah, thank you all so much. Follow me on Spotify. Check out my books. Links to all those things are in the description. Let's spread our reach, spread our influence so we can wake the world the fuck up and actually wouldn't it be nice to have a better show, a great show, an amazing show, a beautiful show, instead of these fucking boring ass reruns and bullshit of everyday reality, the monotonous cycle. Blech. Anyway, we can make this world into whatever we so will. So let's will something awesome. Let's see, anything else? Big shout out to everyone who supports. Especially, I always hit that wrong. There we go. Especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Dallas, Nucelina, Chris Magistus, Eric, Zombie Ninja, Seaweed, Ninja Chick, Sandy, Soul, Jennifer, Christine, Toranato, and everyone else. Thank you very much.